orbital station was not designed for people who liked silence. Every corridor hummed with machinery. Every panel blinked with lights that seemed to change rhythm just to keep you on edge. And the overhead announcements were delivered in the kind of cheerful, synthetic voice that made you want to commit minor acts of sabotage. I had been living there for 3 weeks, long enough to memorize which bulkheads creaked when the station shifted orbit, and which vending machines occasionally spat out 2 cans for the price of 1. Long enough, I thought, to avoid embarrassing myself in public. Of course, I was wrong. The accident happened in one of the wide promenade halls, where human merchants shouted over alien traders, and the scent of fried kelp clashed with ozone from the air filters. I wasn't paying attention. I was carrying a flimsy carton of nutrient cubes that I'd promised myself I wouldn't buy again because they tasted like regret compressed into gelatin. I shifted the box under one arm, and that was when my other hand brushed against someone. Soft, warm, and very much alive. She turned so quickly that I almost dropped the carton. She was taller than me by a few centimeters, slender but not fragile, with hair the color of burnished copper that caught the artificial sunlight of the promenade skylights. For a moment, I thought she was human. Then I saw her ears, long, graceful arcs that swept back like the delicate curves of a harp. Not costume ears, not the cheap polymer attachments some tourists wore as a joke. These were alive, twitching faintly as though they picked up frequencies I couldn't even imagine. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I swear the station's background hum went quiet. She stepped closer, too close, and before I could stammer an apology, she did something utterly baffling. She clung to me, arms wrapped firmly around my middle, head pressed against my chest, as though I'd just saved her from a collapsing airlock. I froze. People don't do that on a station, not unless they're drunk or you owe them money. Around us, the crowd slowed, their conversations faltering. A merchant paused mid-haggle, holding up a jar of pickled tentacles like it was part of the show. Even one of the security drones hovered closer, its lens swiveling as it politely suggested, in its monotone, possible physical altercation detected. Please remain calm while corrective measures are assessed. It's not an altercation, I said quickly, hands raised as though surrendering to the absurdity of it all. It's fine. She's fine. I'm fine. We're all very fine. The alien woman did not move. If anything, she tightened her grip. My carton of nutrient cubes slipped from under my arm and hit the floor with a dull smack, scattering foil-wrapped squares across the polished tiles. A kid darted out of the crowd and scooped one up, then scampered away before I could object. I tried to peel her off gently, muttering apologies. Listen, I didn't mean my hand, just look. It was an accident, all right. Pure accident. I've got a long history of clumsiness. You could interview my teachers, my neighbors, anyone, really. She tilted her head up to look at me. Her expression wasn't angry or offended. It was something stranger, something that made me swallow the rest of my nervous babbling. Her luminous eyes shimmered with a kind of focused intensity that made me feel like a bug pinned under glass. "I don't understand," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was talking to her or to myself. The drone interrupted again. "Warning, suspicious embrace, sustained beyond average social parameters. Would you like to file a report?" I groaned. "No reports, no suspicious embraces. She's just friendly." That earned a ripple of laughter from the crowd, which was now fully enjoying the spectacle. Someone shouted, "Get her a drink first." And another chimed in, "Careful, buddy. Next thing you know, you'll be married under alien law." The woman ignored them all. She finally released me, but only to grip my wrist with surprising strength. Her ears angled forward, almost like antennae. Then, in a voice that was low and melodic, but carried just enough steel to silence the crowd, she said something in her language words that sounded like a waterfall colliding with a wind chime. I blinked at her, completely lost. Yes, no, maybe. Her grip on my wrist tightened. She spoke again, this time slower, as though repetition would magically grant me fluency. I stared at her, wishing I'd paid more attention to the station's xenolinguistics bulletin, instead of skipping to the parts about which food stalls offered discounts. Mercifully, a translation device chirped nearby. A tiny spherical bot zipped through the crowd and projected its interpretation in a flat, mechanical voice. "Statement: You have initiated the bond. Query: Do you accept responsibility for the bond?" I blinked. "The what?" "Bond," the bot repeated cheerfully, as though that cleared everything up. Equivalent terms include vow, pact, sacred linkage, permanent attachment, possibly matrimony, potentially servitude, occasionally doom. The crowd erupted in laughter again, and I felt heat crawl up my neck. I tried to shake my wrist free, but she held on with calm determination, her gaze never wavering. "This is a misunderstanding," I told her, or maybe the bot, or maybe the entire station. I didn't bond with anyone. My hand brushed. "Look, accidents happen." The bot hovered closer. "Correction, among her species, contact of such nature is not accidental. It is deliberate, meaningful binding." I buried my face in my free hand. "Oh, fantastic. That's just fantastic. I'm doomed by clumsiness." Again. The alien woman's lips curved in the faintest of smiles, though whether it was amusement or triumph, I couldn't tell. She tugged me gently, but firmly toward the edge of the promenade, her pace steady, as if everything were already decided. The crowd cheered, as though I'd just been recruited into an interstellar soap opera. I stumbled after her, still trying to salvage some dignity. "Listen, we really need to talk about what just happened, preferably somewhere without an audience, and preferably after I retrieve what's left of my lunch." She glanced back at me, ears flicking as though she'd understood at least part of that. Then she gave a single nod, the kind that suggested negotiations would happen, but on her terms. And just like that, I was being dragged through the station by a mysterious, long-eared alien woman who apparently thought my clumsiness was the start of some grand cosmic contract. I had no idea where this was going, but I had a sinking feeling it involved a lot fewer nutrient cubes and a lot more trouble. The cafeteria smelled faintly of engine coolant and something pretending to be soup. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the alien woman sitting across from me, staring intently at the tray of food like it was a puzzle box that might explode if solved incorrectly. She had insisted we eat together, though I hadn't exactly agreed. It was more that she followed me through the station until I finally gave up and ducked into the first place that didn't serve my least favorite dish, fermented krill patties. The cafeteria wasn't much better, but at least here you could convince yourself the noodles were made of actual wheat rather than recycled algae fibers. She leaned forward, long ears twitching as though they were somehow scanning the steam rising from the bowl. "This is nourishment?" she asked in accented standard. Her voice was calm, musical, but carried that same edge of absolute seriousness that had drawn half the promenade into laughter earlier. "That," I said, poking at my own tray, "is noodle surprise. And the surprise is that you don't get food poisoning. Most days." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "And you ingest this willingly?" "Well, not willingly. It's either this or the vending machine that thinks every user is allergic to flavor. So yeah, willingly by default." She picked up the fork like it was an alien artifact, which technically it was, and jabbed at the noodles with the precision of a surgeon. Then, without warning, she shoveled a bite into her mouth. Her ears flicked. Her expression froze. I leaned in, curious. "So, what do you think?" She chewed with deliberate slowness, then swallowed as if she were sending the food to its doom. "It tastes like an electrical cable disguised as vegetation." "That's an upgrade," I said. "Last week it tasted like despair." Her lips twitched, almost but not quite a smile. She tried another bite, then carefully set the fork down as though concluding a scientific experiment. "Humans willingly suffer their meals. This is fascinating. You say suffer, I say character building." And she tilted her head, ears angling toward me. "Character building. You construct identity through culinary torment." I shrugged. "Pretty much. Some people run marathons, others eat cafeteria noodles." A sound came from her, a quiet, musical tone that I realized was laughter. Not loud, not unrestrained, but genuine. It was the first time I'd heard it, and for a moment I forgot the noodles entirely. We ate, or at least I did, while she continued to observe the room. Every now and then she'd ask questions that turned heads at nearby tables. "Why are your drinking vessels transparent? Why does that man consume 3 desserts, but only 1 nutrient portion? Is the green sphere on his plate edible or a weapon?" Each time I tried to explain, she usually looked more skeptical afterward. By the time I gave up, she was already leaning closer, her ears catching snippets of conversation around us. "You are loud," she remarked. "Humans, yes, you fill the air with noise, even when not necessary. And that's just how we survive. If we stop talking, we might have to start thinking, and no one wants that." She blinked at me, then let out another soft laugh. When the meal was finished or abandoned in her case, she stood gracefully and waited for me to follow. I hesitated. "You know, I usually like to take a nap after noodles. Helps me forget I ate them." She ignored that, already striding toward the observation deck. I sighed and hurried after her, nearly colliding with a cleaning drone that beeped disapprovingly at me. The observation deck was one of the few places on the station where silence seemed possible. Wide windows revealed the starfield outside, broken only by the slow drift of freighters and the gleaming arc of the planet below. She stood there, hands clasped behind her back, ears angled toward the void. "You come here often?" I asked, trying not to sound like a bad pickup line. She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "Your stars are loud." I frowned. "Loud. They hum, I hear them." She touched her ear lightly. "The frequencies." Another delegate, this one with gills along its neck, spoke up. "Among her kind, the bond is sacred. It is not to be entered lightly. Yet you stumbled into it." "Yes," I said. "Stumbling is kind of my specialty. I should put it on my resume." The delegates didn't laugh, but she did softly, just enough to make my humiliation worth it. The human official sighed. "Be that as it may, the bond has consequences. Political consequences. Already, factions are whispering. They question whether this is a calculated move or a reckless accident." "Definitely accident," I said quickly. "Reckless is my middle name, but calculated, not a chance." The alien woman placed a hand on the table, graceful and deliberate. "Accident or not, it is done. He is bound, and I accept it." That silenced the room. A few jaws dropped. Someone coughed so loudly it sounded rehearsed. I swallowed hard. Just to clarify, I'm bound. Like legally, spiritually, metaphorically. Because I left my metaphoric handbook at home." She turned to me, eyes steady. "You are bound, but not imprisoned. Do you wish to leave?" Every pair of eyes in the room shifted to me. My brain screamed yes, but my mouth betrayed me with, "I think I'll stay." There was another wave of murmurs, some scandalized, some intrigued. The insectoid ambassador clicked its mandibles again. And this time, the translation bot announced, "This is either the beginning of unity or the beginning of a very entertaining disaster." I sighed. Honestly, probably both. The meeting went on far longer than my patience could endure. They argued about cultural norms, potential alliances, and whether or not I needed to undergo some kind of initiation, ritual involving glowing stones. At one point, a delegate proposed I should be scanned for genetic compatibility. I nearly fainted until the alien woman flatly refused. Her tone cutting enough to slice through the pretzel-shaped hologram. When it finally ended, I staggered out of the chamber like a man who'd just survived a philosophical interrogation by 12 angry professors. She walked beside me, calm as ever. "Well," I said weakly, "that could have gone worse. I mean, no one threw a chair, and I only embarrassed myself 9 times. That's progress." She glanced at me, ears tilted in amusement. "You survived. That is enough." We reached the station's quieter halls, where the hum of machinery replaced the murmur of politics. I leaned against a wall, rubbing my temples. You know, back on Earth, the worst consequence of bumping into someone was maybe spilling coffee. Here it's interstellar scandal and potential doom. "I miss coffee." She studied me for a long moment. Then softly she said, "You could still leave." I looked at her, at the way her copper hair caught the artificial light, at the way her long ears angled as though listening to something beyond my comprehension. And despite every instinct telling me to run, I found myself shaking my head. "No," I said. "I think I'll see where this goes, even if it kills me." Her lips curved just barely into a smile. "Brave or foolish? Why not both?" I echoed. For the first time since this whole ridiculous mess began, I felt her hand slip lightly into mine, not the sudden, iron grip of before, but something gentler. And though the station hummed and the galaxy spun indifferent outside, that small contact felt like the most dangerous and the most promising choice I'd ever made. The station's central atrium was never meant to host political summits, romantic misunderstandings, and 3 separate food vendors all at once. But somehow it was doing exactly that. Banners from half a dozen delegations hung from the rafters. Drones zipped overhead, broadcasting the event live. And I was standing at the center of it, all wondering how the hell a clumsy guy from Earth had ended up as the focus of galactic news. She was beside me, calm as ever, her long ears angled forward in attention. The crowd's energy rippled around us, some delegates tense, some openly amused, a few probably just there for the free samples at the noodle stall. I tried to keep my breathing steady, though the translation bot hovering at my shoulder didn't help when it announced loudly. Subject's heart rate elevated. Probability of panic attack, 72%. "Mute," I hissed at the bot. It ignored me, of course. The human delegate, the one with the slicked back hair, stepped forward to address the assembly. "This situation," he said, his voice carrying the pompous weight of someone who'd practiced in a mirror, "is unprecedented. A human and one of her kind, bonded through accidental contact. The question before us, is this bond valid? And if so, what does it mean for our relations?" Dozens of eyes, some human, some very much not turned to me. I tugged at my collar. "Hi, yeah. Just want to point out," when I brushed her arm, "I wasn't trying to start an interstellar incident. I was just trying not to drop my lunch." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone laughed, of course. Some species just clicked mandibles or blinked multiple eyelids in what might have been their version of humor. Still, it was enough to loosen the atmosphere. The reptilian delegate hissed something sharp. The bot translated, "Intent does not matter. The bond is sacred. He is bound." The insectoid ambassador clicked rapidly. Translation: "Let them decide. If both accept, then it is truth. If not, it is theater. Either way, entertaining." She placed her hand lightly on mine, the gesture calm but deliberate. "I accept," she said, her voice steady enough to cut through the murmurs. What began by chance has meaning. He did not flee. He did not reject. He stayed. All eyes swung back to me. My brain screamed at me to run, but my mouth betrayed me again. "Yeah," I said. "I stayed," which is weird, because usually I run from commitment faster than from a gym membership. But here I am. That drew another ripple of laughter. Even the human delegate cracked a reluctant smile. I swallowed and pressed on. "Look, I know I don't understand your customs. I know I've probably broken every rule in the book without even knowing there was a book. But when she grabbed my wrist that day, I could have pulled away. I didn't. Not just because her grip was terrifyingly strong, though it was,